Ron, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak and huge appreciation for everybody's time today. I hope you're not zoned out by other continuous presentations that have been happening for the last couple of hours. So taking in from what Harvey was mentioning in terms of the journey to the cloud success, it's very key, right? We start with cloud strategy, but as we know, that your strategy is only as good as its implementation. And many of the cloud migrations that have happened in the past for any enterprise, you would see that most of the strategy has always been lift and shift, right? And because it's lift and shift, there's always been a reactive way of going and fixing the issues whenever it has happened. Now, if I have to really get into a mode of, okay, if I have a strategy and I need to ensure that it is a success, what is my first step? The first step is cloud governance, and that is what is going to make your cloud journey much more seamless and successful. Now, with cloud, we always know that it's easy to go ahead and access resource, provision resource, make it available, but then we should not underestimate the complexity of the cloud itself. And more or so, today enterprises are either adopting to one cloud or multi-cloud. But even if it's one cloud, we know that within one cloud, you are consuming more and more resources. And with the new way that is coming, wherein you are allowed to go ahead and provision accounts on the fly, it becomes even more complex. Now, that's where the complexity in terms of governing multiple cloud accounts and access comes into the picture. Imagine you are on AWS and you have hundreds of accounts, and tomorrow you want to adopt Azure. There you have multiple subscriptions. So see the complexity of how huge it becomes, right? That's one. The second is, as you provision more and more accounts, it is also important to understand that any workloads that gets provisioned should also be in compliance with your own industry, with your own enterprise standards or industry standards. How do I ensure that I'm complying? The third is, we know cost has always been the number one talk whenever cloud has come into the picture, right? But what CoreStack looks at cost as, it's basically a control that needs to be added upfront than being reactive. And that's why if you put certain controls upfront, the challenge of tracking the cost will be much more minimal. The more the workloads get added up, it is important that you, as an organization, you have a complete visibility into all the services and all the resources that you are consuming at any point in time, right? So there's important that when you provision any resources, it follows a naming standard, it follows a tagging standard. So it is important from a visibility perspective. And we always know that if something is not visible, it is very, very difficult to even manage or govern. The last is, from a workload provisioning perspective, from an operational management perspective, it is important that any resource that gets provisioned within any account, as you continue to scale, it is important that the associated operational guardrails are also enabled, right? Many of the times, with the flexibility that cloud provides, where you are continually provisioning accounts and provisioning resources, you forget to do various other post-provisioning activities. You forget to enable monitoring, you forget to enable security, and you end up either having an issue with reliability, availability, performance, or security risks. Yeah. So with one cloud, we know now that complexity is huge. But how do we make it more simple? And with all these surveys that are happening in the industry, we do know that it was cloud before. A couple of years back, everyone was thinking to be on the cloud or not to be on the cloud. But now cloud is a necessity. And today everyone is talking about multi-cloud. Is it again to be or not to be? But I think it is going to be a reality where multi-cloud will become your new home. Yeah. And more or so, all the cloud service providers have this whole concept of shared responsibility. Now, when shared responsibility comes into the picture, the native cloud service providers take care of what they are responsible for. But from an enterprise who is adopting a cloud, really need to ensure that governance is always part of their strategy than an afterthought. And that's why cloud governance cannot be an afterthought. Now, how do I implement cloud governance? Implement ECG for your cloud at scale. Now, what do we really mean by ECG? I'm sure everyone would have heard about ECG, right? You go and you check your pulse of your heart. It provides you all sort of data. And that's where you need to implement ECG for your cloud, right? Whenever your resources are there, because today cloud is the heart of your digital transformation, right? So what are the various kind of pulse that I can really monitor to ensure that the account, the health of my account is good, right? I'm healthy. And I'm able to accelerate in terms of the growth and the digital transformation on a continuous basis. Now, what are the key pulse that from a governance perspective, I need to make sure that those controls are already put in? The first is operations, right? As part of the operation, all the operation related controls to ensure that every resource has to be monitored, every resource has to be security enabled, every resource has to be patched or backup, because this will ensure high availability, performance, reliability, everything will be taken care of from an operation control perspective. Now, moving on to the second one, second is security. We do know that today enterprises have to comply to various benchmarks. If they are in healthcare, they have to comply to HIPAA from a security perspective, right? So you need to have a support of ensuring that all of those workloads comply to certain security benchmarks. It could be CIS benchmarks, or it could be HIPAA standards or FedRAMP, FISMA, it could be anything, right? So you should have those controls put in place. The third is cost. Ensure that the cost controls are added in way advance and should have the capability to ensure that these cost controls are also adjusted as your consumption goes high, right? The last is, the fourth is access. So as an organization, as you keep on provisioning more accounts and more resources, you also tend to give more and more access. And as you start giving access, there is a time when it comes that you have given too many access to the users, but the user is only accessing one aspect of the resource within a single cloud. So you should have an intelligence and control to ensure that it should work at a least privileged strategy perspective from an access point of view. The last is resource. You should have control in terms of ensuring the resource which is being consumed from any of these cloud providers should be very, very seamless, but should ensure that all the controls are put in place. And if you have all these 5 parameters or 5 pillars or 5 pulse ready, then your entire cloud journey is going to be successful and you will achieve an autonomous cloud governance at scale. So with this, what I really say is CoreStack presents you with what we call as OSCAR, right? Operation, security, cost, access, and resource. So whenever you think about cloud governance, think about OSCAR, think about CoreStack. So in today's session, we present you OSCAR for your cloud account. Now, I was talking about autonomous cloud governance. How do we really achieve autonomous cloud governance is in the age of cloud, we always say, follow the age. Everything starts with automation, right? You act and then you govern. And with act and govern, you also ensure that you should engage with the third-party tools to ensure that you cover end-to-end life cycle of your governance in scale. Yeah. So with this, I'm just going to go walk through 2 case studies which we have implemented to large enterprises, and they have seen immense improvement and also adoption from a cloud perspective. One to a very large healthcare pharma company, healthcare industry. They had huge data centers where as part of the digital transformation, they were adopting Azure and they wanted to move all of their workloads seamlessly. But then there was a lot of hurdles, primarily because it is all they have to be in compliance with GxP, right? Any new resource that used to get provisioned in cloud, even in cloud, it used to take anywhere between 40 to 45 days primarily because every resource has to, before even giving it to the user, it needs to ensure that it follows certain compliance standards. They did not have total visibility, because when they really provisioned an account, it was a pay-as-you-go account, right? So every department within an enterprise started provisioning their own account, their own credit card. So there was no governance at all. And so they didn't know what is my overall cloud cost, what is my overall inventory, how much have I really moved from my data center to the cloud. They didn't have that visibility at all, right? They were not able to provision the complete life cycle of an application workload end to end. They wanted to create an automated way of landing zone, which was not there, right? With CoreStack, it all started with landing zone. CoreStack provided them a means of automating the landing zone creation to ensure that the governance is followed right from the inception and then is continuously monitored, right? CoreStack also helped them set up the service brokerage through which their users can come request for pre-built catalogs, which are already GxP compliant. So by using that, they were able to reduce the entire 45 days, which they took to provision any workload, from 45 days to 4 hours. That's the kind of operational efficiency that CoreStack brought in for this particular customer. The second case study is a large mutual fund and asset management company. It's from a financial industry perspective. Again, it was a movement from data center to cloud. And again, in the past experience, it was multi-cloud, starting with Azure, and also getting workloads into AWS. But this one this is only Azure. So with this, what I'm trying to convey is, your governance challenges are not only for multi-cloud. It is for single cloud, and it becomes even more when it goes into multi-cloud. And how do you ensure that it is much more seamless is what CoreStack really helps you achieve, right? With this particular customer, we were able to help them implement the Azure cloud governance principles. As you know, each of the cloud service providers, they prescribe you best practices, but it's only a prescription. It is only written in descriptions, right? How do I ensure that everything is automated and implemented, monitored, and then governed on a continuous basis is what CoreStack really did in this particular case, right? There are 5 pillars of Azure cloud governance, which were implemented automatically: security, cost, operation, resource. And with that, CoreStack, being a single pane of glass, was able to provide them holistic visibility into their cost, their cost, their inventory, and their operational view. So about CoreStack, yes, we've been in the market for the last 4.5 years, touching 5 years. Recently, CoreStack was awarded IDC Innovator. We've been there in the Gartner Magic Quadrant research. We are a partner with AWS and Azure. We are an advanced technology partner. We are Microsoft Gold partner with CoSell Ready status. So that clearly says how we have really improved and how our platform aligns with the cloud provider itself. And one of the key takeaway of CoreStack to everyone is, apart from Oscar for governance, second is we are completely cloud native. So when I say we are completely cloud native, it clearly gives you an added advantage of adopting to the services at a much more faster rate, because you really don't have to wait for 3 months for a platform to support a new service offered by the cloud service provider itself, right? We ensure that every services which are offered by the native cloud service providers are chained together and are made available on day 1 rather than day 90. Yeah, so that was a quick run through of what CoreStack is. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Hey, Venke. It's Ron Gerber. That was fantastic. I just was reading some commentary from George from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, and I'll just read this, which I normally don't just read it verbatim, but I can't speak it any better than what George pointed out, where he said, normally the last presentation is the hardest. I agree with that. Venkesh's presentation is excellent at retaining my attention at this moment.